Welcome to the Rig and Farm YouTube channel. In this video we're going to show you how we installed a gate and a few lines of steel wire on our garden fence. But first, a little chicken update. A few vlogs ago we showed you that one of our hens was being very broody and not joining the other girls. A few days ago she finally started joining the others. Time to head up to the farm and get started on this fence. Our day started off with loading the back of our SUV with a gate, fence posts, tools, chicken wire, and a few other things for later use. We used two 8 feet long 4x4s for our gate posts. In hindsight, we should have positioned that T-post on your left further away from where we're installing the gate. It ended up causing some problems that you'll see later in a future vlog, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to check that one out. We had considered purchasing or renting an auger to dig these holes more easily, but a few post holes here and there doesn't warrant the cost when this post hole digger and some muscle can get the job done just fine. And there was some logging debris under the surface, and the ground was much harder the deeper we went. It only took about 10 minutes to get 22 inches deep. We were shooting for 24 inches, but the end of the post hole digger wouldn't close all the way because of the small diameter of the hole, preventing the handles to separate anymore. We opted to use only dirt to fill the hole once the post was put into it. We plan on expanding our garden at some point in the upcoming years and didn't want to mess with removing the concrete if we move the gate. That T-post made filling in the hole on the one side a little difficult, but we made it work. We picked up this post level a few days ago, and it was pretty handy for ensuring the post was level in every direction. We tamped down the dirt by foot a little more before switching over to this tamper. The post did get out of alignment as the dirt shifted, but it was close enough. The only purpose of this post is allowing us to attach a gate to our fence. Perfection is not completely necessary, especially since our ground is already pretty uneven. At some point, the additional tamping was unnecessary, but it felt very productive to smack the ground with a heavy piece of metal. Now it's time to attach the gate. We had to set it next to the post to figure out where to drill the holes for the hinge bolts. We chose to have the bottom bolt on the underside of the hinge and the top bolt above the top hinge. This will prevent the gate from being lifted up. The holes were marked with the end of this drill bit. We tossed the gate aside while we drilled the holes with our 9/16 inch spade bit. It would have been smart to realize that the bolts were 4 inches long and 4x4s are actually only 3.5 inches thick. The holes should have been drilled all the way through, but it wasn't too big of a deal. We started screwing the J-bolts in by hand and quickly realized we needed some kind of tool to help with the job. This piece of metal with holes in it worked great. It was discovered when grading the land prior to installing the T-posts. Who knows where it came from, but it made the job much easier. After the bolts were screwed in all the way, it was time to loosen the screw on the top hinge. That allows it to slide up and down to hook onto the bolt. The bottom hinge was slipped over the bottom bolt, and the top hinge was slid up around the top bolt and tightened with the screw. We have a gate, and it works! Not too bad for our first time. Now it's time to get the second post installed. This hole wasn't any easier to dig, but it had to be done. We could only get 21 inches deep with this one. Oh well. Pushing the post doesn't knock it out of the hole, so hopefully a deer won't be able to knock it down once the fence is up. After playing with the post for a little while, we filled in the hole with dirt and tamped it down just like the other one. By the way, it was much easier without a T-post in the way. Now let's nail some insulators into the posts. We're going for function over beauty, so we just eyeballed where they were going to be placed. Again, our ground is so uneven that a fraction of an inch shouldn't hurt anything. Galvanized nails were used because they're rated for outdoor use. After installing all the insulators on both posts, we added a wire tensioner between the T-post and wooden post. This placement was good in theory, but as you'll see in a future video, we ended up having to remove all of them and put them on the left side of the T-post because the wire was touching the post and would ground the current. To start a line of steel wire, we tightly looped it around the insulator a few times to make sure it was secure. We'd twist the end by hand before using pliers to get even more snug. It felt like wrapping a bag of bread but using 14 gauge wire instead of a twist tie. These tensioners are super affordable, and we couldn't imagine building this or any other electric fence without them. They're great. It's easy to feed the end of the wire into the small hole and crank it until it wrapped around 3 times. This ensures there's adequate slack if there's a break in the wire and it needs to be spliced later on. Ashley and I had a pretty good system for running the wire around the perimeter of the garden. I put a stick through the center of the spool to make it easier to carry and walked in front of her while she connected it to the correct insulator on each T-post. These spools started off with a half mile of wire each and weighed 47 pounds. Not too heavy, until you're walking about 500 feet around the garden through logging debris, times the 9 strands we did. Luckily, it does get lighter as you use more wire. When we got to the other side, we cut the wire and wrapped it around the insulator. We used pliers on the first few strands, but decided to do them by hand after that. It seemed like overkill. After both ends of the wire were secure, we used the tensioner to pull it tight. Once it became difficult to go further, we'd pull on the wire to provide a little more slack for the tensioner to get a hold of. Apparently there's a tool that you can get for the tensioner that acts like a wrench, so you can get it way tighter than by hand. We might have to look into getting one of those. It took us just over 3 hours to get the wooden posts, gate, 13 insulators, and 4 strands of wire with tensioners installed. That time also included trying to figure out how to do everything. Well, that wraps up another day of working on this fence for our garden. Make sure you subscribe and watch our next video that shows us working on the fence some more. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time!